It's where I was born. I was born in Tasmania, which is the smallest state of Australia, and to me it's in my heart, because even though I now live in England, I still call myself an Australian, and when I go back it's like I've returned home. And when I started to write, I knew Australia, and everyone always tells an author to write what they know, and I knew Australia, and so I wanted to write about it. And because the history in Australia is compared to the history in America, it's like the Wild West, because you have the convicts, you have the people who go out there to begin a new life. It was dangerous, it was exciting, it was exploration, to see a new world that had never been discovered. And I wanted to get across this idea, which is why I started to write, which is why I wrote Mathilda's Last Waltz. It was a story that had been in my head for a very long time, and somehow I knew it was a very important story that needed to be told, but I had only just started writing, and I'd written 5 books before I got published, and my first 2 books that got published were psychological thrillers, very, very different to these Australian books, and after 3, I decided I didn't want to write psychological thrillers anymore. They are very dark and they play with your mind, and I thought, now I have learnt enough as a writer to be able to do justice to this story, and very nervously I began to write it, and it moved itself. It was a story as if it was in my head. Someone was telling me this story, and all I had to do was write it. And I knew when I had finished this was very special, that this was going to change my life. I didn't know how, but I just knew this was a very special book. And it was a little while. I was in Australia on Australia Day, which is the 26th of January, and I was picking up my emails, and my agent in London sent me a message to say that Germany had bought Mathilda's Last Waltz for enough money to pay off my mortgage. So it had already started to change my life, and from there it grew and grew. And in France, I know, is very special. I've met many people here this weekend who say, "Oh, je t'aime, Mathilda." It's lovely, because I sit in my office in England on my own, and I'm writing, and I don't know how other people will see what I do. I just write from my heart and hope that other people enjoy it. But the idea came from a gravestone. I saw in a very old cemetery there was this very old gravestone, and almost obliterated, and it was so strange. And I'm not going to tell you what was written on it, because it will spoil the story, because I think at the very end of the book I actually say what is on the gravestone. But it was this idea that started the story, and I'm thinking that in a place like the outback of Australia, it is very, very solitary. And so things can happen that nobody else knows about. Secrets are very easily kept, and so it was the ideal place to put it. So this is why I wrote this book. So yeah, and I'm really glad it's done well, because it is my favourite book. It was my first, my big book, and of course it's, you know, yeah. So all I have to do now is write another Mathilda.
Yes.